Hey guys, welcome back to the Bayside Fabrication YouTube channel. Zkart, I think, is alive and well. Let me just go over a couple things I did since the last time you guys saw this car. I believe the last time this car was on the channel was it died at the track and we didn't know what was going on. So we got it figured out. But let me show you what I did in the meantime. I cleaned up my entire wiring harness to the best of my abilities. I put in a switch panel with my AFR gauge and switches. So right now, my switches run off the ignition. My switches run a 30 amp relay with a fuel pump, 30 amp relay with fan number 1, 30 amp relay fan number 2, and these are 2 spare switches I have for whatever else in the future. So I did 2 things because I was having the overcooling issue. So now I have each fan wired individually, and I'm just doing that until I can figure out a good way to get one on a thermostatic switch. But that's, you know, something that kind of got put in the back burner because the car wasn't running. Well, let me show you in here. So it's not like ultra super duper clean, but I kept, you know, the relays here. This goes to our AEM wideband, which is a fail-safe wideband, which I just set up last night. So I have data logging now capabilities just through the wideband, so it'll log AFRs and boost on a table, which is nice. I relocated our computer to be right here, so it's a little more up and out in case of any chance to get in the elements. And just cleaned up all the crap. So overall, I mean, there was a ton of wires that came out of this. So our old computer fried, and I'll show you a picture of that right now. And what happened was the 2 pins on the computer went into one of the pinout locations onto the harness, and the car ran fine. We had no idea that even happened. And that was when we did the MS43 swap initially. So we just plugged the computer in, the car ran, we got it running, blah, 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 everything was good. Then we tuned it and everything was great. And then we went to the track, car dies. Unplug, you know, I start going through the wiring harness, found a couple burnt up wires, but they were like dome light stuff, you know what I mean? It wasn't anything significant. And then pulling the computer, I found that burnt, or the corroded plug connection, which means there was a bunch of issues going on there. And long story short is we tuned around a problem. So when we reinstalled the file from our dyno day, that tune was actually making the car run rough and super lean, and it was just acting bad. So what Vlad and I did was we reloaded the MS42 tune, our base fuel map, from before we tuned it, and it ran so much better. However, our AFR gauge was still reading 18 plus, and it turns out I had a bad O2 sensor as well. The wideband went bad. So I just got a new wideband yesterday, and now everything's great. So it was a twofold problem. The tune was wacky because we tuned around the issue, and my wideband crapped out on me. So at this point, the car's running good, and this is the first time I'm going to drive it with that older fuel map. Now the older fuel map is not tuned, not refined. So we're gonna have to go back and pretty much retune the car. But I also bought a laptop, and I'm an Apple guy, so I can't really do anything with Apple with this car. So I actually wound up just getting a cheap used laptop, and now I can use ROM Raider, and I can flash my computer, and essentially I can tune this car completely. However, I have no idea what I'm doing, so Vlad's kind of holding my hand, and you know, kind of go baby steps with it. But now I can at least data log on my wideband, and you know, we can do all sorts of cool stuff. So I'll show you guys that. But enough talking here. Let's take this thing for a drive. All right, guys, we're at a traffic light here. Car's running. It's running. Our AFRs are a little wacky. We're actually running pretty rich at idle, and then once we get in the boost, it winds up leaning out up top, which is exactly what it was doing on the MS42, because we were only running like 6 pounds of boost, now we're running 13. So It's just one of those deals, we gotta just add some more fuel up top. We're gonna play it cool, we're just gonna putt around, so there's nothing spectacular happening right now. But it's good to be back in it, man. It feels great, and I can't wait to get this thing retuned. And I was talking to Vlad, and I think we might bump the boost pressure up a couple pounds, maybe go 15 psi in it and see what that gives us. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, really don't need to be doing this, but we got our little stack of springs here, and we're bumping this sucker up to 16 psi. It's running 13 right now, and I was gonna run 14 and a half, but my next best option was 16, so we'll just give it another extra pound and see how it does. But I think it's gonna be great, so let's button this up and yeah, cross our fingers that we don't blow this thing up. Well guys, I just learned that there's a big difference between 13 and 16 psi. The car's not even controllable really at 16 psi. So I might just put the 13 in, or there's actually a 14 and a half spring, I think. I think maybe I'll just go 14 and a half and see how it does. All right guys, check this out. This is pretty neat. So this is the AEM failsafe wideband, and what it does is it measures air fuel ratio in correspondence with boost. So this axis here is the boost pressure, and this is our air fuel ratio. So this was the last 20 minutes ride home. It was mostly just cruising, and you know, I did a couple pulls. I did like 2 pulls, and you can see right at about 15 to 18 psi we started to lean out a little bit. You can see here, this is 3rd, 4th, 5th gear right here, and it's cool because you can actually, you know, set the time and you can see where you're at with your manifold pressure versus AFRs. For what we hit 17.7 psi, and at that my AFR jumped to 13.7, which is dangerous. So that wasn't good. And then this was the 5th gear pull, which didn't break loose, but we ran 16.7 psi at 12.8. So like it's leaned out a little bit there, but at 15 psi full load we're at about 11.9 AFR, and that's really kind of where I'd like to be right now. So just pretty cool software here. Well, I have to say guys, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I don't know what happened, but I put in a wrong spring combination on our gate here. I ultimately put in like an 18, I think it was like 18 and a half pound combination. I don't know where I got my chart from or whatever, but I did what the chart said, and that was not the right one. So I don't know what happened. So that's why we were having issues. I mean, this thing was pulling like a freight train, but I mean, it was leaning out and it was getting into dicey territory. So I'm back with a fresh arrangement of springs. And my AFRs were looking great, and then as soon as it pretty much went past like 15-ish, they started kind of rising pretty dramatically. I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought I was getting boost creep, but it turns out I wasn't. I just had way too much of a spring in here. So I was only looking for just a little bit of increase in boost pressure, just to kind of play around with tuning and stuff while we were at it. You know, because we're gonna have to retune this car anyways, so I might as well just bump it up a little bit. We know it's at 400 now, so I think 450 would really be like the max I think I'd want to ever go with this motor, not being an open motor. I think that's really kind of the threshold of where things can start going south with rods and stuff like that. So we're gonna leave it below that level, but as of right now, we're just going to get a good spring in here and try to do our little home-brewed tuning here and see how things go. So the next step in our project here, while I am on stay-at-home dad duty for the next 3 days, is we're going to install this 315 Torsen differential. Now, I know you guys, I've been talking to you about the diff that's in here is a 410 welded diff. It's just way too crazy, and it is really not great to drive. I think this is going to be a much better upgrade. It's the diff that came out of the Z3. All right, guys, we're cracking open our Torsen differential. Now, I haven't opened this before, and now that I think about it, I'm not sure if I've even seen one in person. So I don't think you're going to be able to see it. But you see in there, there's like helical gears in these. There's a whole video I watched actually online because I wasn't really sure how they worked. And I watched the video and it was great. And I'm still not sure how they really work. All I know is they're great differentials. They're nice because they don't require a clutch pack, like a limited slip. However, when they unload on one wheel, they almost act as an open diff. So for drifting, I'm not sure if that's going to be the best. This is going to be the best thing if we're going to start sliding around. But I do know from firsthand experience, this does lock up both wheels in a straight line, that's for sure. And I've done donuts in this multiple times. So I haven't had any issues thus far. So we're going to see how it goes. I can already tell you there's going to be a night and day difference just from going from this to, or from our 410 welded to this, because the 410 is just so ridiculous with that much power that it actually makes it pretty terrible to drive. But this took maybe 20 minutes to pull the diff out. So easy job. What I did to make my life easier is I just dropped the subframe a couple inches, the entire subframe, and it makes the bolts on our rear subframe much easier to access. All we gotta do is top her off with some oil, and we're gonna take this sucker for a rip. These differentials, they're like the easiest thing to ever service. This whole diff swap took me about maybe a half an hour total. 45 minutes. On these, there's a top and a bottom plug, and you drain from the bottom and you fill the diff up until it runs out the top hole. That way you know you're filled, when you're on level ground, of course. And that's it. Nothing fancy. Pretty pumped, man, on how this is gonna turn out. I already know it's gonna be a game changer here. All right, guys. Now, Showtime is having an event tonight that I'm gonna try to go to at least tune the car. So what I did was I added 7% fuel to the whole table that we had. So I'm gonna pull that down 1% or 2 and see how it looks. And I'm a little rich at idle. Oh, maybe not. I'm actually looking all right. I'm pretty much stoic at idle, so. Well, man, this diff makes all the difference in the world. I don't know what I was thinking with the 410. That was stupid. Okay, the car was running pretty good, running rich, but look at right here. I was only running 10 PSI, which is weird. I don't know what's going on with these springs I got. I think I got maybe a mixture of a couple different springs here. So I'm gonna try a different combination once we get to the track and kind of do a little test and tune on this thing and get it sorted out. But yeah, as of right now, we're not even making, you know, I was supposed to be making 14.5 PSI, we're making 10. So I'm gonna throw in the 13-pound spring I had before, and we'll see how that looks and take it from there. Other than that though, it's pretty dead on the AFRs. So I think, I mean, obviously that's under load up until 12 PSI. So as long as we don't climb too much, I think we'll be good. So the table seems to be pretty reasonable. See this nice flat line right here? But that flat line can actually be bumped up just a tad. So we're gonna play around with it a little bit. This is Ben's Tuning 101, which is totally based on no experience and kind of a general idea of how this works. So we'll see. Good thing these motors are cheap, because maybe I'll need one by the end of the day. But doubtful. I think we'll be in good shape here.